All right. Good morning to everybody. Blessings on your life. It's another day that the Lord has made, and we're going to rejoice and be glad in it. I apologize for being a little bit late today. I'm dealing with fatigue, and I'm just trying to get myself together. Um, I hope you all did the homework, um, per se, where I I presented an older message from the series Alien Invasion. And I gave that to you on Thursday to prepare you for today because I noted that we would be going into some serious waters, some serious places. And so I wanted to prep you because the things that I'm going to be talking about, if you don't have some type of a foundation of it, you're going to be really lost. Now, let me just say this, that this particular series and the series of Alienation, it is not for the faint at heart. And what I mean by that is it will present some theological tension, and it will present some psychological tension with the way that we have enveloped our understanding about how who God is and how we should live and how we should think. Um, so I want to just put that out there first. If you are not a believer of heaven and hell, then this may not be for you. If you don't believe in angels, then this may not be for you. This is going to take us into a very broad and dense part of the woods as it relates to theology and Christendom, if you will. The purpose of this particular series is to highlight some things that are very germane to where we are right now. It may not seem like that in my initial message, maybe today or maybe the next time that I teach, but this is the direction that I'm going in because the information that I'm going to share with you it's not just information to give you so you know you'll have maybe an understanding or maybe an argument or an opinion. It's not that. It is to point you into the direction and to arm you for things that are to come. This whole thing is Bible based. And if you don't believe in the Bible, then it's going to be very challenging for you to believe in this. Now, I mentioned on last week that um, I was going to inject the book of Enoch into the conversation to bring us some support. And I am most definitely going to do that. And I want to say this because I do see some of your responses out there, your comments, um, and by no means am I trying to um, alter um, the ideology and uh, the direction behavior of individuals. If that's not your choice, then we are it's like God gives you freedom of choice. You have a will to do whatsoever you want to do. So in that light, that's totally up to you what direction that you would want to go in. The things that I'm going to share, they can definitely be supported biblically, biblically. Now, as it relates to Enoch, The reason why I want to mention him, I've talked about him before, and I found it to be a bit problematic that the Bible now that we ascribe to, that most of us believe in, it mentions Enoch in terms of his origin. He was born at a certain time. It talks about in the book of Genesis when he was born. It talks about his departure. It talks about how long he was on this earth. And then it says that he was not, because he was translated. This is in the Old Testament in the book of Genesis. And then we can also reference him in the Hall of Faith. The Hebrew writer in the New Testament, he also mentions him, and he talks about that Enoch, his testimony was how he pleased God. However, when we get to the Bible, we do not find the book of Enoch in there, because at that particular time, the canon was composed of men that were not spiritual. And the book of Enoch is a very spiritual book. And if most times, if we can't explain something, then we kind of wash it away. We throw it out because we don't understand it. We cannot explain it. It is to be spiritually discerned. The book of Enoch is to be spiritually discerned. And so, for that reason, I can understand why the composers of the Bible, of the 66 books, they could have added another one if they wanted to, but they chose not to, because they thought it would be a bit conflicting as it relates to the overall story of Jesus Christ. And I can understand where they were coming from as it relates to a man's perspective, to a soulish perspective, to a studied perspective. I can understand that. However, the flip side of that is that the word of God is spirit, and the Bible says if you're going to worship Him, you're going to worship Him in spirit and truth. The scripture also says that the law killeth, but the spirit maketh alive, or it quickens. So it brings to life things that the flesh would not understand. Now, um, I'm going to share some things today and this morning, and it reminds me of when Jesus was talking to Peter. When he was talking to Peter, and Peter said something to Jesus that got his attention, and Jesus asked Peter. Peter responded to Jesus' question. He says that thou art the Son of God. Thou art the Son of God. And so when Jesus heard this, this is what he said. He said that flesh and blood did not or has not revealed this to you. I'm saying this for a reason. Flesh and blood has not revealed this to you. Now, for a lot of you out there that would argue with me, and I understand, and that's fine, where I'm going to be coming from today is a place where flesh and blood is not the revelator. Jesus says that my Father in heaven has given this to you, or has revealed this to you. Now, when I say flesh and blood, what do I mean? Because both has the ability to talk and or communicate. So when we say flesh, flesh would come under the uh, the auspices, if you will, of someone that has been learned, someone that has studied, that has read, that has been taught something, someone that has had an experience with something. So now you start to get into flesh because now flesh answers the question. And a lot of us, we are answering questions with our flesh. It is our own ideologies, where we come from, the schools that we have attended, the culture in which we was raised, and that we were developed, and so on and so forth. So Jesus says to him, he says, flesh and blood. Now that's the flesh portion of it, and it deals with our senses and our experience, our learning, our understanding. But then he goes on to say, he says blood, because a lot of times the flesh can be tricky. The flesh can tell lies. Now, when you go to a doctor, and just say you're going to get a general checkup, the doctor may say to you, "Well, how do you feel?" And you say, "I feel great. Do you have any pain?" "No, I don't have any pain." How have you been feeling? In the last 3 months or 6 months, I've been feeling wonderful. This, that, and the third, right? And so, because of your age, maybe because of your history, your family history, he says, well, let me do some blood work, because what we don't understand is that there is another communicator that is attached to us, that is inside of our blood. The Bible says that life and death is in the blood. So they will take blood from you, and although you say one thing, when they take the blood from you, the blood goes to a lab and it comes back, and it will tell stories about you that maybe you are not aware of. And so now, when Jesus says flesh and blood, because Jesus is aware that not only the flesh has an opinion, but also the blood can go even deeper than that. And we need to go outside of flesh and blood. And so he says that my Father in heaven was the only one that could have revealed this to you. Even when we look in Genesis, when God talks to Cain, he says, where are you? What have you done? It is the blood of your brother that is crying, that is talking to me. It's crying from the ground. It's crying from the earth. It's trying to get my attention. It's inside the blood. I'm saying all this to say that the blood talks. So now I'm saying these things, or suggesting this, because the Bible is vast, and it's plethoric in its communication. It's trying to get information to us and a revelation to us that is beyond us. And so you have to be able to step into the spirit realm in order to bring these things to you, to communicate them out, or to understand it, or to journey, to coexist in this planet, this world better. Now, I know I've said a whole lot right here, and I'm just saying this because I know I'm gonna get pushback because of the nature of this particular message. Today, I'm not dealing so much with a salvific message. I'm not talking about Jesus per se, as it relates to that he lived, he died, and he was resurrected. But I am talking about Jesus because he comes in the volume of the book. The thing, though, about this, it's going to take us a little bit deeper. When I say little bit, I'm just, that's a figure of speech. It's going to take us a lot deeper. And so you have to be a spirit man in order to go into these places. A lot of churches and pastors, two things, will not teach this, primarily because probably 90% of pastors today in America and throughout our world, they do not know, and know this information. And the others that do know this information, they shy away from it because of its the nature of it, the content. When you start getting into things that are, it's almost like I was watching a documentary on UFOs uh, the other day, and it just became very problematic. Why? Because people, it's not nothing that you can readily understand. It's not tied to a science and or a sense knowledge. And when you have things that are not tied to something that you can sink your teeth in and realize it, you again, you tend to just throw it out and you think it's nonsense, or um, it's a myth. It's a fairy tale, and myths and fairy tales are real. And then there are things that sound like myths and fairy tales that are not real. That's the reason why I said, well, do you believe in heaven and her and earth? Do you believe in the Bible? Because the things that I'm going to say, it's all tied together. It's just a matter of how do you want to relate to it. Now, let's move into our message because I want to talk to you today from the subject atmospheric changes or atmospheric shifts. There are things that are going to happen around us and that are happening around us. They're happening for various reasons, and we are not aware of it. Um, for the most part, we are being affected by it, but we don't understand the origin of it, where it's coming from. And so I want to start talking about that a little bit to put you on alert, if you will, to bring about an understanding of what is actually happening, what is going on with us. Okay. And so we're going to deal in this area because when you look at us and the challenges that we have on this earth, they are coming from the three areas, primarily three areas. And we're going to talk about it, although we're not going to get into it in depth today. We're going to talk about the watchers, which are angels that were on Mount Hermon, and they were of the number of 200 angels that at some point they looked at humanity and they looked at the women in humanity, and they saw them, and they saw their beauty. They lusted after these women, and they said, "Let us go in unto them." Basically, to know them, to have intercourse with them. Now, these were angels. They were fallen angels. They were not the angels of heaven. Although Mount Hermon was a high mountain, they had been kicked out of heaven. I don't want to really say it like kicked out, but their purpose was to watch over the earth. That was their purpose. So I won't say that they were kicked out, but they served a different purpose. All angels are not the same. So they served a different purpose. I say kicked out because of their fallen nature after they made a decision to do what they did. Anyways, we will get into that. So we had these watchers, and these watchers made a decision. It was 200 of them. They made a decision to come down and visit the sons of men, or the women of the earth. I'm gonna say that, the women of the earth, and they did so. Then and that was very problematic, and we'll talk about that. And then you had the what came out of that was giants. What came out of that hybrid situation, that you had the watchers, which were angels, or they were able to disguise themselves and to come to look like man. They were able to do that. and they were able to function like a man, to eat like a man, to coexist like a man, but they were not men. They were of a different type of substance or flesh. They went into the women that were naturally created and came from God. So you have the watchers, and then you have the folks that came out of the watchers, which were the giants, and then you have the pure humans. And so we have all this, and we need to make sense of it, because it is because of them and the choice that was made, the things that were done in the earth, is the reason why a lot of us are where we are right now, and we're getting ready to see this. We're not getting ready to see it. It's been happening, but it's getting ready to happen on a much higher or more intense level. So it's notable now to be aware of who's around you. Because let me just say this, because I'm trying to take this in parts. Everybody that you looking at, everybody that you touching, are not regular people. And this is where this gets really dicey, because you're like, what you talking about, Willis? So no, everybody is not regular people. You do have the sons of Belial, or you have the seed of the serpent. The Bible says in Genesis 3:15 that the enemy's seed would bruise the heel of the woman, but the seed of the woman would bruise or destroy the head of the serpent. So we have this particular seed now that is in the earth, that is walking amongst man. Okay. It's like in the book of Matthew, it says that there was a farmer that he sowed good seed. Just like when we came, God said, let us make men in our image and in our likeness. And then it goes on in Genesis 2, where it talks about, and he breathed into the man's nostrils, and he became a living soul. He made him out of the dust of the earth. He breathed into his nostrils, and he became a living soul. Now, that was the pure breed of what God wanted, his intentions. However, when we look in Matthew, we will see where it talks about the farmer. He went to sleep. He sowed seed, and it was good seed that he sowed. He went to sleep. Like a lot of us today, we have went to sleep. Now, I know I'm saying a whole lot, and I'm trying to wake up some sleep people, right? We went to sleep, and it says, and there was an enemy that came in, and he sowed his seed, or he sowed tares amongst the wheat. And so the reality of it now is, or the how do I want to say it? The thing that you need to do to respond, the response to that, is to allow the wheat and the tares to grow together. To allow the wheat and the tares to grow together. Where we are right now, there's wheat and there's tares, and we are in one space. We look alike. I've said this before. I love marigolds, and when I used to plant flowers and stuff like that, I would always plant marigolds. Now I'm talking about the real flower. However, I noticed at one point that there was another flower look-alike, and we're living in a time of look-alike, that it came up amongst the marigold, and it looked like a marigold, but it wasn't a marigold. It was a tear, or it was a weed. But because they look so much alike, what's happening right now, and the suggestion is let them go grow together, because they are so close in the ground. They're so close in the soil, and their roots are intertwined together. If you try to separate the one, you will affect the other. So by trying to pull up the tares, you will uproot the wheat. And so the Bible tells us to let them both grow together. And in the end of God, Jesus, the angels will separate the wheat from the tares because they know how to do this particular thing. And so we live in this space right now where we are walking amongst hybrids. Not now y'all getting ready to like what you talking about, Willis? Y'all getting ready to turn me off. Listen, but listen to what I'm saying to you. We are walking amongst hybrids. We are walking amongst people that have been um, um, affected by the seed of the serpent, or the Bible refers to them as the sons of Belial. And the way that you can tell is based upon their actions. It's the things that they do. You can find this in it's Deuteronomy 13 and 13, and also in Judges 19 and 22. And it's all over the Bible. You can find it in different areas, and I'll get to that once I start to really hone into the nature of the breed, the hybrid, the seed of the serpent, and I'll show you why am I saying all this? I'm saying all this because there are things that are happening and are getting ready to happen, and they're going to be polarized. Now, the Bible says that the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. The serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. Now, because of him being subtle, he was able to seduce, to persuade Eve by its suggestive gestures, opinions, and everything that the serpent comes with to alter the plan of God and to cause her to be derailed, to get off track, right? That's what happened. So he was subtle. And what's going on with a lot of us right now, we're dealing with very subtle things, and we're not aware because the enemy is still at work the way that he was at work way back in the beginning. He's still moving subtly. Now, I'm going to suggest something to you, and it's going to be up to you whether or not you latch onto it or you don't latch onto it. But I'm going to say this to you, and I'm saying this because I raised this point about the enemy being subtle. He was the most subtle, and he's still moving on us in a very subtle way. That means that I want to position people where they don't know that I'm destroying them because I'm subtle in my destruction. It's almost like when you put a frog in a pot. When you put a frog in a pot of water, and now this is scientific, you put them in the water and you continue to turn up the heat. Well, the intentions is to kill the frog, right? Or to boil the frog. But since the frog does not know your intentions, he sets in the water and he allows the heat, because after a while, even in our bodies, we can go from one temperature to a higher temperature to a higher temperature. And somebody else coming in fresh, they'll put their hand in the water and say, "Man, that's hot. That's super hot. I can't get in that." But because you've been in it for so long, your body has conditioned itself to where it feels normal or it feels good, not understanding that the insides of you are now boiling. So the frog now starts to boil and it doesn't realize that it's boiling. Next thing you know, the frog is dead, right? And so I'm suggesting to you that there is some things now that are going on, and I want to highlight these things. In light of that, I'm going to say this to this listening audience on today. I am going to suggest to you that we are already in World War III. Y'all say, well, how we in World War III? Ain't no bullets firing. I ain't talking about a nuclear war. I'm not talking about a biological war. I'm not talking about a war of mass destruction with weapons and fighting, hand combat. I'm not talking about that, all that. If I was talking about that, it would be an overt war. It would be an overt war. I'm talking about a covert war. I'm talking about a war that is going on underneath your nose and you don't even recognize it. You don't know it, but it is affecting you. But it is affecting you. And this is the plan of the enemy. Now, let me just give you this before I get into, because I'm just setting the stage up before I really start to get into the Watchers and the Giants and us that are human and how this whole blended thing is coming to a head to a head right now, and it's affecting us in many different ways. So when I say a World War III, um, uh, m- some of you know, and some of you may not know, that there are laws that are being changed and they are affecting us, and we don't really realize that the change has happened. But we are under these changes. It's affecting our lives, whether we want it to or whether we know it to be so or not. One of those changes, and I've got a list of them here, is the tax laws. The tax laws. Now, it used to be, this is what I mean by World War III. It used to be, I remember years ago, I worked at General Motors, and this was 20 years ago. And I can recall some of the guys that worked for me, they were of retirement age or social security age, full retirement, full social security. And at that time, the social security age was 62. The way the tax code and the laws were set up back then is that at 62, you could draw social security. Okay. You could draw social security and you could continue to work in them, and you could get your full social security, and you could work and you would not be penalized because you were getting social security. So in other words, they would not tax you. And I don't know whether or not some of you are of this understanding, but the laws now have shifted. The tax codes have shifted, and what they are doing now is, it once you reach, first of all, they moved it from 62 to 65 to 67 over time. And they do that based upon what they feel the life expectancy is with humanity, right? So people are living longer. So as we live longer, they say, okay, retirement or social security, full social security, you can get it at 67, maybe even 70. It'll get to um, uh, it, before you can actually start drawing it full. But what they did with that, and it's 67 right now, but what they did with that, they said we will impose a penalty, and that penalty now is, whereas it used to be, you could make all the money that you wanted to make and you would not be penalized. Now, and a lot of the older people, they're experiencing it, but they're experiencing it without the understanding and getting hit with it. So they're discovering that, hey, I can draw my social security. They're drawing the social security. They continue to work, and then they look, and then they're taking $1 for every $2 that you make. Now, I don't know that to be exact, but I'm just giving you a hypothetical here, and it is happening. They are penalizing you for what you can do. Now, for aged people, that is a problem. But what's more problematic about it is that you don't know what has been changed. So now the changes now start to affect you, And now we have an internal war. We have some things that are going on. How did all this stuff happen? And I talked to you guys about this back in 2020, I believe it was, and the Lord has shared with me in 2019. He says to tell the people that the horsemen are coming, and that's taken out of the book of Jeremiah, Jeremiah 5, Jeremiah 12. I forget now which one it was, but anyway, he said if he says if you can't run with um, the men, if you can't contend with the men, how can you contend with the horses or the horsemen? Because it's getting ready to get more and more intense. So how does this happen? This subtle thing happens. It happens this way: is that what we will focus on is the covert, not the covert, the overt operation, the thing that is very blatant. So back in those days, we dealt with Black Lives Matter. We dealt with COVID. We were dealing with the Ukraine and Russia war, and all the things that they get the headlines and this, that, and the other. But what we didn't know was that with the different operations in the Senate, the House, and Congress, and all this, they were legislating. They were voting in laws and changes that would affect us, right? And so underneath all that, there was a bigger problem that would affect a lot more people, that was just as important, if not more important. But what was the enemy's job? The enemy's job was to derail us. It was to get our attention off of what you really need to be looking at and just focus on this. So we focused on the Me Too, because people was getting into their feelings and into their emotions, and folks wanted a voice and they wanted to be heard. And so we rallied and we established, these different rights. We looked at the 14th Amendment, and this is what it meant, and reinterpreted and all this kind of stuff. And while we was doing all that stuff, the changes was being made. And so now we look up and we got shifts in the atmosphere, and atmospheres change when there's things that are introduced into it. So I'm trying to polarize or to highlight now these changes or these shifts, but moreover, not just to polarize or highlight them, to tell you where they're coming from. And so I have to drill down into it. It's going to take me some time, and so this is the reason why I tried to set us up on Thursday. And now I want to talk about the watchers, because it is the seed of the serpent. It is what happened behind the watchers, that they impregnated the women. And when they impregnated the women, they affected the human race. So now you have people that are walking around that have the agenda of the enemy. This is the reason why in my message I talked about it's two seeds, right? You have the seed, and the enemy was always looking to replicate, to duplicate. This is what I meant by the marigolds, the flowers. The enemy always comes to duplicate, to replicate the things of God. And so what he was doing was he knew that there was a seed that was coming, and it was going to be a righteous seed, and it was going to be the seed that was going to bring about deliverance and to redeem us from a reckless and sinful world. So he says, in order for me to make a difference, to offset that, I'm going to have to get my seed in there. Now, God already knows the whole plan. And so the Bible is already written out. Prophecy is already at work. So he goes into Genesis 3 and 15, and he tells us what's going to happen. However, he's not telling us all of how it's going to happen. Everything. He's not telling us all that. So what we have to understand is the duplication, the replication, the counterfeit of the enemy that wants to be like God. This is the reason why you have the Christ and you have the Antichrist. You have all these different things. You have, there's just a host of things that the enemy comes to duplicate, that is a look-alike. He's not really it, but he wants to be it. So he comes in And through this process of the watchers and the giants, he is trying to, uh, through impregnating the women, he says, if I can populate the world with my seed and overpopulate it to where the seed of God or the seed of the woman is so few in numbers, then I win. He was never going to win, but he was going to always give it his best shot. And so in doing this is how I try to explain it on Thursday and in my series, Alien Invasion, is that he would impregnate the women. Not only would he impregnate the women, that he would have intercourse with even the animals. It was about corruption. The idea of the enemy is to bring about corruption. Now, I need you to really. I know I'm going really deep here, but you have to understand how this whole thing is laid out, planned out, how we're going to get from point A all the way to point Z until Jesus comes for the return, until the day of judgment and all that. So it's all in there. It's like ragu, it's in there, but you have to be able to pull it out. And the issue that I have is that we are so enveloped in milk that when there's a message like this, and I'm really trying to get you to see something beyond flesh and blood, it becomes very problematic. And so you have to give it in pieces, or you don't give it at all. Why? Because people are theologically taxed or challenged, and they are psychologically, emotionally taxed and challenged to where they say, "Oh, what you talking about with this?" So when we look at this, the enemy comes around and he's very crafty and he's very subtle. And it is the seed of the serpent. It is the sons of Belial that is now amongst us, and it's walking amongst us. It might be your neighbor, it might be your senator, it might be your governor, it might be your president, it might be your brother, your sister. When I say that, a relative, somebody that you are affiliated with. And so I'm going to explain some things, and give you some things to look for, so you can be aware, make a determination that perhaps this person may not be what we think they are. When you look at it, we have 8 billion people that's on the planet. 8 billion is what they say, that we have 8 billion people on the planet. And out of those 8 billion, they say that Christendom it consists of maybe like 2 billion people. And so it's the race now to get, 8 billion people saved. But here's the deal. And you can chew on this and think about it however you want to think about it. But if there is the seed of the serpent, and the seed of the serpent cannot be saved, I'm going to say that again, the seed of the serpent cannot be saved because it is a hybrid. Okay. And so it has to run its course, but it will run its course, and the end of it will be destruction. But they are amongst us right now. However, if we're trying to get 8 billion people saved, we may not be able to get 8 billion people saved. Maybe from a humanistic standpoint, humans may only be 3 billion. And I'm just giving you something to think about when you look at it, because the seed of the serpent has been raging for many, 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 many years. Okay. And so now you have, I know I sound crazy. I know I do, but I have Bible to support what I'm saying. It's just going to take me some time to get there. So out of all this time, you have these hybrids that are running around, and they look like you, they talk like you, they eat like you. They go to school where you go, they work where you work at, but there's something inside of them that is not of God, that is totally opposing of God. And so when I again, when I bring these subtle things to you, and the people that are affecting the atmospheric climate, you have to consider these men of renown, these men of old that are suggesting. I ain't even got time to get into when Adam and Eve, when they ate the forbidden fruit, and a lot of us were challenged because we think about the fruit in a very human way, like, they, not apple or orange or pear, not like that. A lot of us do think of like that, but we just think of it in terms of something that we ingest, and that God told them, don't eat of the fruit of the tree of good and evil, a knowledge of good and evil. And so it's like, what, they ate of the fruit. But the word fruit does not mean something that you take and you bite to ingest to give you nutrients. That's not what the word fruit is. The word fruit is to partake of a knowledge and understanding that is off limits. It is not for you to understand. Hence, when we look at where we are now from a technological standpoint, the reason why we are there is because of fruit that was taken, that was eaten. This is the reason why it says, in the day that you partake, that you eat of the fruit, you shall surely die. Now, in that day, the Bible says that a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day. Adam and Eve did not live beyond 1,000 years. So did they die in that day? They did die in a day, according to the way God measures a day, or God measures time. And so they did partake of this particular fruit, and it gave them an understanding, a knowledge that God did not want them to be aware of, and that knowledge now has been passed on. It has been passed down, and so we are living and operating in a space where there are things that we are coming into a knowledge of, that we think that's helping us, but it's hurting us. Things that deal with the climate, things that deal with the moon, and we want to go to the moon and make cities on the moon and all that stuff. Now you got all this stuff going on. Well, where is it all coming from? Okay, so we want to delve into that, and to take a look at some of these men. um some of these men, you got the Gateses of the world, and you got the other folks that's of the world, that want to make changes. And so we say to ourselves, what's driving them to either change the amount of people that's on the world, to increase them on one hand, because they talk out the side of their neck, and to decrease them on another hand. Where did the virus come from? The virus, COVID. Where did it come from? They're suggesting that this fire that happened in Hawaii was man made. There's just a lot of different things that are going on. Somebody said on October 4th, in a couple days, that um, they're going to send a signal through 5G, through the phone. They're going to send a signal through the phone, and this signal is going to activate something inside of the human body, a frequency. It's going to cause a frequency inside of us to respond in a way that will ultimately be to our demise. Now, I'm just saying, this is, you could say this is hoopla. I don't know. I do know that it's a whole bunch of little funny stuff that's going on. That's all I'm saying. That part, I can't. That I can't etch that in stone as it relates to that, because I don't really know what all's going on. But I am curious, and I don't trust. I don't trust man. I don't trust man, because I do know that there is the agenda of the seed of the serpent, and the enemy is moving uh very fast, because he knows that his time is up. Although he does understand that Jesus has already come. because before that, he was rushing to populate the world with his seed, and Jesus came through it anyway. That's why, or the reason why I said that David, when I said that David was a man after God's own heart. And a lot of times we can look at people and we judge them because we say, well, they're not righteous. They didn't do the right thing. Trump wasn't righteous. He didn't do the right thing. He not righteous, didn't do the right thing. And the evangelicals should have gotten behind him and reprimanded him behind it. However, was he anointed to carry out the will of God? Was he anointed? um what's the other guy? Cyrus, King Cyrus in the Bible was not a righteous man, was very unrighteous. However, the Bible says that he was the anointed. He was appointed by God to carry out a certain purpose. And it was the same thing with David when you look at his unrighteousness in terms of him killing people, the blood that was on his hand, uh, the way he took Uriah's wife Bathsheba, the way that he laid with so many women. He was a man that he he had some serious issues. And so when we look at that, we say, well, God would not use that. But what David did do, and what we don't look at, was that David took off the head of Goliath. And that was more important to God than all the other things that he was doing. Why? Because it attributed to the bigger picture, the bigger plan. And that was to bruise the head of the serpent. And so Goliath now was of the breed of the giants, right? He was of the breed of the giants. And so when David got to him and he took off his head, he was a picture of Jesus. When Jesus died on the cross, he died on the Golgotha Hill. And Golgotha Hill, the reason why it's called Golgotha Hill, because it's the place of gall, or the place of skull. It is a place where Goliath's skull was buried underneath that. However, the cross was on top of that, meaning that prophecy was fulfilled, that you would bruise the heel of the woman, but the woman would bruise or destroy the head of the serpent. And so we see the actualization of that, or the fulfillment of that, at the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Okay, I've said a lot for today. I'm going to park it right there. We're going to get into some really deep stuff going forward. Let me know in the comments if this is something that you want to continue to hear about, or or otherwise. I think is very necessary. My objective is to bridge everything together and to talk about some of these things that are going on. I'm going to talk about men dominating women's sports. Men, they're men, but they have taken on the posture or the look of a woman, and they dominate. And is that right? Women with the urge to dominate and to get into sports like football. Uh, it's a man's sports, not honoring her body. It's one thing if a woman is in the sport with women, but now you have women now wanting to participate in male sports in the NFL with men with shoulder pads on and all that. And it's the rights now. It's like, I forget exactly what they call it, but it's just for everybody to be on the same page. It ain't, there's no right or no wrong. It's not binary anymore. It's not black or white. It's just all, it's gray. It's very gray areas. And so we got these FDA regulations and stuff, what they're doing with the food, and who's allowing all these things to happen with the food, to make changes to ultimately alter our health and the way that we think, and how long we live and all that kind of stuff. All this is happening. And I can point back to the seed of the serpent and the design, and the intentions, the agenda, to rush us to this end. But I just want us to know that in the end, we win. However, we do need to be mindful, to be equipped, to have a knowledge and awareness and understanding of what is happening in the earth at this time. All right, y'all, remember this. The worst is over, the best is yet to come. Your quality of life is getting better and better and better. And because of that, you're going to live and not die and declare the works and the will of the Lord for your life. I want you to share this. I want you to give me a thumbs up. I want you to like it. I want you to share with a friend, a neighbor, an enemy, or what have you. I am Dr. Donnie Eatman, and I am the face of Face to Face Ministries. I want you to go in God's strength, God's speed, God's mercy, God's grace, God's love, God's everything. I want you to go in that until we meet again. I want to say shalom to you. Be blessed. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful week.